Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session, How Juniper Simplified Customer Data to Accelerate Business Impact. My name is Nipul Chokshi. I'm a VP here at Dun & Bradstreet, and I'm really excited to have you guys join us here today. McKinsey recently found that digital commerce has experienced 10 years worth of growth in the past 3 months. It's an undeniable fact that the need to drive data-driven digital transformations has elevated in importance and urgency. And obviously, having a solid data foundation for your enterprise is paramount to success. I'm really excited to be joined by our guest speaker today. Sandia is a Director of Operations from Juniper, and she'll be talking about how her team created a data foundation for growth and revenue for the company. And so with that, Sandia, take it away.
Thank you, Nipul, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm the Director of Sales Operations from Juniper Networks, and I look forward to sharing our customer master journey with all of you today. A little bit about me. I am a Lean Six Sigma practitioner and change agent, and I'm a champion of simple, elegant process solutions. And that's how I'm approaching the Customer Master Program, which I took over about 6 months ago. A little bit about Juniper. We are a global company that specializes in innovative networking solutions. And our strategy, the single thread that runs through our strategy is simplicity. In fact, our CEO, Rami Rahim, has set the tone for our company with this quote: "We are committed to tackling network complexity so that our customers can focus on growing their business." So taking Rami's lead, our Customer Master team's mission is to tackle complexity in customer data so that our go-to-market teams can focus on growing the business. So here's our story. So when you have a charter like Customer Master, you end up being everything to everyone. So the first order of business was really to determine what we do, to define very clearly what to do, and have that as a contract between the team and the stakeholders. So here's our mission. Our mission has 4 pillars: data relevance, data accuracy, productivity, and transparency. And eventually our measures of success would fall within these 4 pillars. So in pursuit of that mission, there are 6 things that we need to do really well, 6 core competencies, if you will, we need to nurture and support. All of them are equally important, but I will highlight just a few of them today. The first is master data governance, which is the most important and also the most challenging. And that is simply the practice of bringing a cross-functional team together to think scientifically about data and think philosophically about data and really have a joint ownership for that data. The second core competency that's very critical to our success is third-party data strategy. And this is important because we can easily get lost in the myriad of microservices, data stewardship platforms, and third-party strategic data, firmographic and technographic data. And it's really easy to get lost in that. So therefore, a coherent third-party strategy is extremely crucial. And the third core competency I've listed is the technology roadmap. And most companies most organizations I've been at, put technology at the forefront. So I just wanted to highlight that I see technology as one of the levers, but not the primary one. In fact, in order to get full utility out of your technology, we really need to strengthen our governance and really define and strengthen our landscape of data and processes. The other 3 core competencies listed are general run-the-business elements, which are equally important, but I won't go into them into detail today. So let me share with you my blue sky vision. So whenever I speak to my stakeholders, I encourage them to think beyond their current pain points and imagine a future where master data management is something that we have a coherent practice. And I call out Juniper and Mist because one of the things we are grappling with is how do we integrate our acquisitions correctly, efficiently, and really robustly. So I ask my stakeholders to imagine a scenario where our master data practice is so mature that it can easily integrate acquisitions, I am asking to imagine that we have a really robust onboarding process and a governance process, and we have ownership, we have clear business rules, and we have clear guidelines for important master data topics such as security and privacy. So if we put that much into our master data practice, what we get out of it would be the right data in the right context, in the right medium, and in the right hands to grow the business. And we would finally be able to use one tool, one CRM tool, which in our case is Salesforce, as a single pane of glass, not just as a tactical and operational tool, but as really an engine for driving growth. So how do we get here? I think most organizations, most leaders would jump into a technological investment and patch fixes. However, I would like to advocate an approach that I'm leading the Juniper Customer Master team down a path, which is a really methodical approach. So we are in stage one. We're about 6 months into this journey, and stage one is all about foundation. One element of that, the one major element of that is this Master Data Council, which simply means getting a cross-functional team together and saying, hey, you own data. You have the responsibility to care for data, and you are empowered to shape the data. And we will need to sit down and think about data philosophically and answer simple questions like, who is a unique customer? What is customer data? And this is my favorite. What does good data look like to you? So once we have that foundation, the rest simply falls in place. So we are doing that right now. And another thing we're doing as part of our foundational phase is to do a comprehensive data inspection to get some control of our current data, to get out of the reactive mode and move forward to more strategic and more process improvement and data improvement initiatives. And we're doing that in partnership with Dun & Bradstreet, which has kindly, is co-speaking with me here today. And we are doing a comprehensive data inspection with the purpose of, making a volume of data more sensible and having confidence in that smaller volume of data, so that we deduplicate, we purge things that are irrelevant and invalid, and Dun & Bradstreet is an integral part of that inspection. So if we do that well, which I hope we do in 2020, we will now be ready to tackle process improvement, which I consider to be a stage 2 endeavor. So this is all about simplification, standardization, automation, and really being surgical in our data stewardship. And my hope is that we will get away from talking about fields and attributes, and we will now talk about concepts like Customer 360. So this is the transformation I hope to engineer as part of the next phase. And once we do that well, we will then be ready to pick any technology that's in the market, any technology that works for us, that's economical. We will have the strength in our foundations and our processes to absorb any major change that we choose. So the technological evolution could be more strategic rather than simply patching pain points that we have. So I talked about foundations. So here's a sample of what that looks like. This is one of the first outputs of the newly formed Customer Master Data Council, and it's a document that took us about 4 months of really lively debate to put together, but it's paying off very, very well, because now instead of talking about 400 plus fields, and everyone has an opinion on what they should look like, and we're constantly reacting to complaints about fields and what they should look like. Now we've come together and determined, hey, out of the 400 plus fields, about 70 fields actually have relevance, and of that, only about 30-something fields are considered master data. And that definition is extremely powerful because it gives us focus and it removes noise. We've all agreed that customer master data has cross-functional relevance and a practical business purpose, excuse me. So once we had that agreement, what we could do was to assign each element a health score, indicating the satisfaction, stakeholder satisfaction with that data element, as well as an alignment score, how that data element is, how robust is that definition of that data element across all of our systems. So here's a sample of what that looked like. And there was I sensed some restlessness with the approach that I just showed you, because it was perceived as slow. Why are we documenting what we already know? We could be just moving, jump into solutioning and fixing things. But I want to show that this methodical approach did yield a lot of results, even in 6 months. And I'm going to call back to the mission that I shared earlier: relevance, accuracy, productivity, and transparency. From a relevance perspective, based on the metrics the measurement method that I shared, we're about halfway to having a pristine data dictionary and absolute clarity, which is a pretty good result for 6 months of effort. From an accuracy perspective, again, I want to reiterate that we're doing this in partnership with DNB to get some control of our data, and this is paying off very, very well. We have about a fifth of our records that we are able to disposition because they're no longer relevant or no longer valid, or they're duplicates, and we have been able to improve our DUNS match rate pretty significantly, and that gives us confidence, and that gives us the ability to have deeper knowledge of that particular customer. So extremely good results there as well. From a productivity perspective, of course, there have been many wins that have that have come up. We have had improvements in cycle time, yield, accuracy, and the net of it all is that we have some really talented people freed up from manual mechanical work, and we are able to use them for higher skill, more strategic work, process development, stakeholder engagement, things of that sort. That's a really positive outcome there. From a transparency perspective, this is subjective, but in a nutshell, it feels better. That's what I wanted to convey. So I just spoke about some short-term operational gains, but I also wanted to call out that what we do matters for Juniper's corporate strategy and operational strategy as well. There are a myriad of ways in which customer data team's efforts directly impact Juniper's success. One example I wanted to call out is that by having robust customer verticals data, we were able to guide the go-to-market strategy and territory management, as well as respond effectively to the recent COVID pandemic, to make very shrewd strategic decisions based on robust data. And in addition to that, there are a myriad of other ways in which we really matter in terms of operational efficiency and in terms of compliance. But the net of it is that master data at Juniper is not just a tactical, process-oriented, run-the-business initiative. In addition to that, we are also a strategic business partner to our go-to-market organization. So this is my conclusion slide where I want to share key learnings from our month journey. The first lesson that I wanted to convey is that it's a very solid investment to talk about foundations, just to strengthen foundations before attempting to make any step changes. It's a myth that it slows us down. That's a myth, and I think we've dispelled that at Juniper, that these foundations don't slow you down. In fact, they accelerate you by strengthening your decision making, by removing the noise, and by attrition proofing your organization. The second lesson is to keep discussions tool agnostic and jargon free. There is really something powerful about doing that, and I hope you take my word for it. The simpler the language, the more universal it becomes, the more people, the more viewpoints you're able to take in and absorb, and it just leaves more room for logic and science. The third takeaway is to nurture cross-functional ownership. A trap that many companies I know fall into is that they over-centralize master data to a point where those closest to the data are too far removed from it and no longer have the motivation or the access to maintain the data. So my advice to all of you is to really nurture cross-functional ownership and empower people closest to the data to own the data. The next point is related. In order to have cross-functional ownership, we need a robust crowdsourcing process, and that goes beyond simply saying, yep, you own it, you do it. It means an investment in an intake process, in making it easy to report problems and prioritize problems, and establishing a track record for fixing problems in a very swift way. So that's what I mean by a robust crowdsourcing process. And my fifth, lessons learned is absolutely, my favorite. Take time for nerd talks with your vendors. DNB has a very strong engagement with Juniper, and one of the favorite parts of that engagement is the availability of technical resources, technical experts who have reached out and said, hey, we want to have an intellectual chat with you about data. It's not, there's no commercial agenda here. They made it very clear. We just want to talk shop. And that's been extremely valuable. So I encourage all of you to find the nerds in your network and do take advantage of their broad knowledge and outside-in perspective. So with that concludes my segment. I'm happy to take your questions now.
Awesome, thanks, Sandhya. That was great indeed. Especially love the kind of the simple framework that you laid out in terms of the 3 steps to having a kind of your data foundation for your business. And I see a lot of questions coming in, so let's get started with Q&A.
Awesome, awesome. So one of the questions here is from Joanne. Talks about compliance. So you talked about regulation and being able to comply with regulations. She's curious as to how are you measuring success when it comes to compliance?
That's a great question. The compliance journey has been very interesting at Juniper. There are different flavors of compliance. There's trade compliance, there's privacy, and all of that. And Juniper did go through quite a journey there. A lot of lessons learned, a lot of developments in the past years, a lot of trouble, and responding to that trouble. So there was a lot of lessons learned. And the transformation that we're having right now is that we are getting away from simply addressing compliance with flags. I think that's the trap that we'd fallen into. Every compliance use case had simply had a flag. So now the way we're approaching compliance is that master data needs to tell you whatever you need to know about how to segment a customer and how to isolate your customers according to what you need. But the empowerment for documenting the rules and putting in those controls in our systems are going to be closest to the experts. So that's really enabled us to be just to have a lot more confidence in our in our processes and know that we're not just checking a box, but we're really empowering the people closest to who know what the regulations are and simply providing the data that enable us to respond.
Awesome.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. Got a whole bunch of questions coming in here. So, so another question here. This one's from Sean. said, can you talk a little bit about the Master Data Council, kind of that effort, specifically focusing on how are you engaging and kind of making sure that the stakeholders over the lifetime of the council continue to engage and kind of are bought into that concept so that it's successful?
That's a great question, Sean. The premise of the council is that you come and you participate in the council, and you have joint ownership of that data. You have a stake in the data. The council, it's not simply coming to a meeting and I'm pushing an agenda. So I've that just building that trust and relationship with that with those stakeholders has been really the premise of that council. And the objective of that council is to create knowledge assets and to just be a forum for solving large problems. There are lots of ideas that people have about improving data, but they're simply not they don't feel empowered because they are afraid that this may have unintended consequences on several other teams. So the premise of the council is, hey, you have the buck stops here. Just bring your ideas. We'll do the brainstorming, troubleshooting, and we are empowered to take action there and then.
Awesome. And so the next question comes from Brian. He talks about data stewardship. He's just wondering, what does stewardship look like in your foundational phase?
Good question. So in the foundational phase, it's there are just two prongs that we're tackling. One is just determining what good data looks like. How do you define good data? What is the spec? So without that, everything else we do is simply reactive. We're simply responding to the loudest voice. So the foundational phase was to really have some standards in place, some specs in place, so that we can proactively start measuring the data. And this is eventually going to lead to a dashboard where we continuously monitor the data. So that's one prong. The second prong was to really invest in the crowdsourcing process that I talked about, just making it easier to intake, to take in, to listen, just ears to the ground, closest to the people that are closest to the data, and just enhancing that and getting some intelligence there. So that's what stewardship looks like in this foundational phase, but eventually it's going to morph into using DNB, using vendors like DNB to power our stewardship process.
Right. Yeah, and we've definitely heard that that's a kind of a common thread in terms of the stewardship. Obviously, you want to get as close to the folks who are going to be using the data on a day-to-day basis and make sure you're engaged, right? And so that goes a long way towards driving that stewardship. So I'm seeing kind of people are saying we're running out of time here. So we have a bunch of questions. We will get back to you individually. I do want to take a second to really thank you, Sandhya. This was a great story. The framework and insights have been certainly very invaluable. And thank you again for your time and effort. Thanks. And to those joining the session, hope the rest of the show goes as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.